On this episode, we'll discuss practical strategies for church growth that actually work. Well, hey there, and welcome to another episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast, the show that is dedicated to inspiring leaders and empowering healthy churches. I'm Kendall Connor, joined by my co-host today, Jessica Moore. Hey there, how are you, Jess?
Hello, Kendall. I'm good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm excited to jump into our episode today. Are you ready for it?
Yes, I'm ready. I geek out over this stuff.
I know. I'm the same way. Well, we have an incredible guest for all of our listeners. Let me tell you all about her. Holly Tate is an executive coach and growth strategist with 15 years of experience helping leaders unlock their full potential. She's the founder of the Ready Network, and she has formerly held executive roles at Leader and Vanderbloemen. A certified working genius facilitator and a member of the Forbes Communications Council, Holly is passionate about leadership development and empowering others for sustainable growth. She is returning for her second time on the Church Leadership Lab podcast, and I'm excited to jump into it. Today, we're going to be talking practical strategies for church growth that actually work. And so I'm excited about this one today, Jess. This seems like a good topic, right?
Yeah, I think anything leadership development, I know systems, processes, efficiencies, I'm excited.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like for all of our listeners, maybe your church, you've got big dreams, but your bandwidth is super limited. Maybe you've tried new programs or you've tweaked your Sunday experience or revamped your website. You've done all these things you feel like, but growth still feels out of reach. I feel like today is an episode for you. You're just tired of spinning those wheels and feel like you're not getting traction. Or you ever just feel like, why isn't your passion translating into progress? I feel like today's episode is going to be right up your alley. And so before we jump in, I would really like to encourage all of our listeners to hit the follow button wherever you're enjoying our podcast. Or if you're watching over on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button. We really just want to make sure that you stay in the know about everything that we release, because we are continuing to release these helpful episodes, valuable resources, all of these things. We want to make sure that you don't miss a thing. All right. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest today, Holly Tate. Hey there, Holly. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Yes. I feel like if anyone hasn't listened to her previous episode, definitely by all means go back and listen to that one. It was a great one.
Well, it's good to meet you guys, Kendall and Jess. Thank you for all that you do to help church leaders and bring these conversations to light. In that intro, Kendall, you had so many good liners there, like passion into progress. I'm like, I need to write these down and put these on my website. That was awesome.
I love that.
You wordsmith, you. Okay, well, Holly, we always ask this. We heard your bio, which was phenomenal, but what's something that doesn't make your bio that maybe friends and family would know about you?
Yeah, this definitely is not in the bio, but it is a fun fact, which is little fifth grade, Holly Hall. That's my maiden name, Holly Hall, which that's a different conversation. Why my parents decided to kind of, name me the same name twice. But anyway, Holly Hall. So little fifth grade Holly Hall was the narrator of the Little Kids Adventure Bible.
Oh my gosh.
The NKJV. Wow. You can no longer, it was on CDs,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Which maybe our younger Gen Z listeners don't even know what that is, but if you Google it, you can still find, I can't remember what website maybe it's like Bible.com or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But
Zondervan.
where you can still listen to a sample, an audio sample.
That's
and
amazing.
It sounds like I have a clip on my nose. It's super nasally little fifth grade Holly that's like, and then Jesus said, but it was awesome. It was a great experience.
That should
we
be on
knew
your
we
bio.
had a celebrity with us today, but we did not know it was on that level, right?
Yeah, for real. That really should be on your bio, Holly. Just slap it on there.
Well, right. And then, but the only thing is, I think I was paid, I don't even know. I think it was probably $200, which to a fifth grader was a lot of money.
Yeah.
I didn't get royalties. I'm not even in the byline, nothing at all.
You were rolling into the school book fair though. You were ready to go. You had budgets.
I love it.
Seriously. Exactly.
And for our younger listeners, CD stands for compact disc.
Yes. Make sure we include that.
Google those later.
That's awesome.
I still have my CDs actually. And weirdly, my daughter got a CD player, like the sweet lady gifted her a CD player. And I was like, this is not a gift for you, Lisette. This is a gift for me and Dad. And we both busted out our CD cases and listened to a bunch of our CDs. It was very fun for us. My daughter was like, can you skip this one?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. What are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Well, Holly, I know that you have worked with churches and organizations literally like all over the country, right? Like what first sparked that passion for you and, being able to help these leaders and really just help them move from that like potential to performance, right?
Yeah. I mean, it was really, it kind of started, my first job out of college was actually selling radio, like making cold calls.
Wow.
As I don't know, I was probably 22 years old. It was a Christian radio network and I absolutely hated it, but I learned a ton. And one of the things I learned from it was I learned that the like cold calling and selling part of it was not what I enjoyed. But what I loved was when I would get someone on the phone, I loved diving into what the problems they were facing as a leader or from a marketing or sales perspective, as a business or a nonprofit. And I would find myself being on the phone for, 30 minutes or so if they were generous enough to spend that much time with me. And just really loving that part of the process, which I'm sure my boss at the time was like, what are you doing? They're not buying. Get off the phone. Which is really one of the reasons why I took the role at Vanderbloemen. So first off, I cold called Vanderbloemen and tried to sell William Vanderbloemen, the founder of that company, radio. And instead he offered me a job to come help him build Vanderbloemen. And it was really this unique bridge of my skill set. Even though I was really only 1 year out of college, I knew that I loved, I really was interested in marketing. That was the beginning of inbound marketing and the digital world that we're now in. I sound so old now, right?
It was the same for me.
Yeah.
We're the same old.
We are the same old. Oh my goodness. And so, really being able to figure out, okay, how do I align my faith and my passion for just helping people move beyond where they're stuck and whatever that might be. And Vanderbloemen offering me the opportunity as a really young person, as a young leader, to be able to do that from a work perspective was just really, really exciting. So that's kind of how it began. And then, over the last 15 years has really morphed. I think the cool thing that God does is it's so hard to see it when we're in it. But when we look back, I know for myself and my own story, I look back and I'm like, wait a second, what I'm doing now, I never could have done had I done all the things I've done before.
Right.
And so, that's really been my journey of, spending almost 9 years at Vanderbloemen, helping churches from a staffing and team building perspective, then going to leader and trying to solve a similar problem, but with a very different, not perspective. What's the word I'm looking for? Tool, I guess.
Sure.
Software of like, okay, it's not just about hiring the right people. It's really about once we hire them, how do we grow and develop them to reach their full potential, which ultimately means reaching our church's full potential. And then now getting to do that from a consulting perspective of working with executive teams on that. It's really neat to look back and just see how it's all built on top of each other. So probably a, long answer to your question, Kendall. But if you had asked me if I would be doing what I'm doing now when I was, graduating from college at 21, I probably would have been like, what? Are you serious?
Right.
But the fact that I get to wake up every day and help leaders, just go from, what was the line you used? Passion to potential. I'm going to steal that for sure. Or chaos to clarity.
Yeah.
That's, we love alliteration, right? I love that I get to wake up every day and just help them do that.
That has to be so gratifying when you're watching it full circle. Like,
right.
Specifically in the church world too, because there's that extra level of like the kingdom impact that's got to be like soul satisfying,
Absolutely. I'm so grateful for that. I don't take that for granted that I get to do something every day that really aligns my, spirituality and passion. That there's, it's rare that we get to do that. You guys get to do that too. And it's such a gift
It
that
is.
we get to do that.
And just to hit on your point of how seeing things come full circle and how you never would have expected to end up where you are based on where you started, and, just how God will use each piece. I feel like that is a recurring theme, and Jess can speak to that as well. I mean, we see that on many of the guests that we talk through, and what a great reminder for the listeners today that, God will use every step of your journey to bring you where he wants to. And it's really amazing to see. Holly, I know that a lot of churches feel stuck, but if we're really just being honest, right? Churches and leaders will have passion, they'll have ideas, they'll have the talent, but maybe kind of getting that momentum is where the difficulty comes in. Why do you think that is?
How long do you have? I think there's a few factors here. So I'm going to start with the external factors that I think every church is facing right now. And what I'm seeing across the board, and I think part of this is specific to church. And then I think part of it is that I'm seeing just across all industries. And that is this unsettling. And I think there's this subconscious, the fact that it's 2025, we're 5 years after COVID, which I know that hit me. It was like January 1st. And I'm like, wait a second, what? It feels like 10 years. And also yesterday that we were all, that the world was shut down. And so I am seeing this wrestling both internally with leaders, but also externally with, so much of what we're facing, globally, politically, there's just a lot of disruption across the board. And I'm seeing fatigue across the board because of that. The leaders that I work with, often I'm hearing right now, they're so hopeful that we could say goodbye to COVID. And it was like, oh yeah, that was a COVID problem. Things are going to just get back to quote unquote normal. But what we've seen over the last couple of years is just continual disruption, external disruption that is forcing us to look inwardly of how do I need to lead differently for both myself, leading myself differently and leading my team, and then ultimately my organization differently. So those are some of the external factors that I'm seeing of, church attendance looks different, giving looks different, our priorities look different. Schedules look different. Expectations of our team of wanting to work from home or not look different. And so all of that is still so new, even though it feels like we should have it figured out by now. Wow. So if you're listening to this and you are putting that guilt or shame on yourself that you feel like you should have it figured out, you're not alone. We are all still trying to figure this out. There's no leader I'm talking to right now that says, oh yeah, we're doing great and we've got this figured out. So that's kind of the external piece. Sure. The internal piece is, I know for myself, what has caused me over the years to be hesitant or feel stuck is my own doubt or disbelief about myself. I think, I'm just not ready yet, or how do I get ready when really I'm already ready? Lots of readies, which is my favorite word, which we'll talk about in a second. But you are more ready than you think you are. You have more tools and resources and experience than you think you do. And so really having that courage to step up and out to be able to lead in the way that you want to, a lot of it is just ourselves holding ourselves back. And because it's out of our comfort zone, right? We want to be able to blame something else or an external factor when really it's usually something in ourselves that's holding us back, that keeps us stuck.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, but what I'm hearing overall is really that just there's a lot of external factors, right? There's so much going on in our world, but then there's also the things that are just happening internally, right? Like we're trying to get some momentum, but it's just not always as easy and clear cut as we would hope it would be, right?
Mm-hmm. It's so true. Yes. Getting that clarity is often the hardest piece. I know for myself, there's been seasons, sometimes years, where I'm praying for clarity and am just searching for that burning bush. And really, it was right in front of me the whole time, but I was resisting it because of my own discomfort.
Wow. Well, yeah, it is really. So I know that's something that I've heard you talk about, and you've been able to speak to this some. But I know that you have something called the Ready framework, and I'm excited for our listeners to be able to hear some of this today. Can you talk to us a little bit about how we're able to move from chaos to clarity through this framework that you developed?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this comes out of my own pain of kind of what I just mentioned, where it was like, I feel stuck personally. I wish I had a process to take myself through to be able to get unstuck, to have clarity of whether it's, in my own next steps of career or personal life, or whether it's a project that I'm working on in a professional setting or a ministry setting. And so my company is called the Ready Network. I've had that for about 5 years. I left Vander Blumen to start the Ready Network. Leader became a client of mine, and then I ended up joining them full time and put the Ready Network on pause. And so it's been kind of there in the background. And I, at the time, I just knew the Ready Network was supposed to be the name because of the word ready, but I couldn't quite articulate it. At the time, it was more of like a marketing agency, and I was like, man, that's really not what I am super passionate about. I don't want to like run a marketing agency, but there's something to this readiness. And then fast forward to earlier this year, and left Leader to go back to building the Ready Network. And what I've always wanted it to be was more of a professional and personal development, consulting practice. And I was sitting on my couch working on a project for a client, and I just felt like God was like, here it is, Holly. Like, here's what you've done intuitively for 15 years that you haven't recognized. And I just picked up my pen and just started writing. And the framework that I'm about to walk you through came to me. And I was like, oh yeah, here it is. R, reality check, EADY. I'm like, this is it. This is the simple framework that I've painfully wrestled through personally. That's taken me years, that now I'm able to name and help take people and organizations through. And it's simple. I mean, this can work for you personally if you feel stuck. This can work for an executive team if they feel stuck, and this can work for a small team or a department. And so I'll just quickly go through it.
And before you jump in, you spoke to the different folks that this applies to, but really for all of our ministry leaders that are listening today, what I'm hearing is this could apply for really any area of the church. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes. It's broad enough to be able to be applied to, essentially it's a strategic planning tool, right? So whether that's for yourself or whether that is for your communications department, whether that's for your leadership team as a church, it's really just a 5-step process to be able to take us from where we are to where we want to be.
Awesome. I'm here for it. All right. I'm excited for you to jump into it.
Okay, let's do this. So R stands for reality check. And so really this is just a discovery process to really name, where are we really? And I think the really question is key, because it takes humility to walk through something like this. It's very vulnerable for us as the leader, or if we're not the leader and we're going to our leader and asking to walk through this process, that reality check can be humbling and can be really vulnerable. And so to be able to really stop and ask, where are we stuck? Mm-hmm. Why do we think we're stuck there? And what is holding us back from achieving what we really want to achieve? So that's the reality check part. Then E is evaluation. And so I use 2 different frameworks here, depending on who I'm working with. But you can do a simple SWOT analysis, which, SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Or there's also a framework called 4 helpful lists. That's just 4 simple questions. I tend to use a SWOT analysis if it's something that doesn't have empirical data already to analyze, that we're starting from scratch and we're kind of assessing for the first time. And I like to use the 4 helpful lists if we do have experience or empirical data that we can reference that we're more critiquing or evaluating. And so the 4 helpful lists are what's right, what's wrong, what's missing, and what's confused. So regardless of whether you're using, a SWOT analysis or the 4 helpful lists, what we want to look for out of that, whether it's ourselves or a whole team, is patterns. So what patterns are we seeing in each of those 4 areas that are rising to the top?
Wow.
And we want to pick 3 priorities that we then, this is my favorite part, action plans. So we want to build an action plan for each of those 3 priorities, because this is where I see a lot of teams and people get stuck. We can name where we're stuck. We can name why we're stuck, but creating the action plan of what are the milestones that we need to achieve in order to accomplish this goal, and then being able to name, delegate. Who does what by when? So this is really critical from an accountability perspective. Huge. That we're not just creating an action plan and storing it away on our computer somewhere or in our Apple Notes, but we're actually holding ourselves and our team accountable to achieving that action plan.
Yes.
So that's D, delegate. And then Y is yes barometer. This is a really important one, especially for ministry, because Sunday comes every week. Yes. And especially if you find yourself working for, which a lot of us in ministry do, that visionary senior leader who comes up with a new idea every single week, which is their superpower. We want to have the yes barometer to be able to say, okay, does this new idea or project or initiative help us accomplish our action plan? If yes, let's do it, right? Yeah. It pours fuel on the fire. If no, then we really want to pause and come back to that new idea at the end of those, which I like to use 90-day benchmarks, at the end of the 90 days when our action plans are achieved. And so that yes barometer is a really important, it provides shared language to be able to, as a team, hold ourselves accountable to really accomplishing those action plans. So that's READY. And that's the framework that I use with both myself and the organizations that I get to work with.
It is. It's incredible. And I'm just kind of, we've heard each of the steps, and I hope I'm not putting you too much on the spot with it. If we're talking about church growth and, so many different, obstacles and things to growth that the churches face. Can you think of one example that you might take us through that framework really quickly, maybe just to give us a snapshot of what that could look like for a church?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my favorite part is the evaluation piece. And so, for example, let's say let me answer your question a little bit in a different way, and then we'll go back to the evaluation.
Perfect.
So where I see most churches get stuck is that yes barometer piece. So they've created the action plans. They probably even have an owner for who's supposed to be responsible for doing what by when. But the chaos comes from typically the senior leader or the executive team coming up with a new shiny object that disrupts all of the work that they've done on those action plans. And so that's why that yes barometer is so critical. Yeah. So the reason why I wanted to point that out before we talk about the evaluation piece is it's important to have enough what Patrick Lencioni, he calls vulnerability-based trust, be able to really call out and give your last 10% to the questions of what's right and what's wrong. Because if we're in that room and we're not giving our full or our last 10%, we're holding back information because we're scared that if we say, hey, we're doing too many things, or we tend to chase shiny objects, or we're not focused, or we have too many initiatives, that we can't possibly be successful in all of them. If we are not able to name that in the evaluation process, we're going to have a lot of trouble executing on the rest of the framework.
That's good.
So there's a reason why that evaluation is only the second, and there's 3 more after that. And so, so Kendall, I think that's just a little example of like when we ask the questions of what's right and what's wrong, or what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses, we've really got to be, full truth tellers there to get it all on the table and have the courage to be able to name those things, in as a group, so that we can move forward beyond them. Otherwise, we're just going to stay stuck.
That makes a lot of sense. So would this be a framework that a church would say, for example, they would go through if they say, okay, our Sunday services are not growing, or we're not getting participation in our service events or something like that. Is that a good idea of an example of something that they would be trying to take through this framework?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm working with a church on exactly that right now. They've got an awesome strategic plan that they worked so hard on a couple of years ago, but they really haven't seen the momentum from it. And so when we went through the evaluation piece, so to your point, Kendall, the question that, I was brought in to help them unpack was really the, why aren't we growing? Like, we spent all this time on this strategic plan. We have a great plan. What's going on? And so what we identified through the evaluation piece of those 4 helpful lists was we have an activation issue. And so they were doing a great job of making a plan, but the delegation piece of who owns what by when was missing. So then we can't implement anything because everyone's kind of pointing fingers, and not maliciously.
Sure.
But just like, oh, I thought Kendall was doing that. Oh, Jess wasn't on that. Oh, I was supposed to do that. And so the team is just confused and spinning their wheels rather than actioning things and moving things forward. And so we were able to uncover that in the evaluation piece. So then when we moved to the action plan piece, we were able to really, really, really dial in on clear owner. So every action plan should have a champion who owns that action plan. So it's not a shared, it's kind of that old adage of like, if you tell one person, I just ruined it. If you tell 2 people to feed the dog, does the dog get fed? Probably not, right? And so we can't have shared responsibility. It's really got to be clear ownership in order for those action plans. And that's usually where I see churches not growing. It doesn't have to do with, it's rarely because the team's not smart enough. It's rarely because they're not resourced enough. It's rarely because they're not innovative or creative enough. It's usually because they don't have clarity on who owns what by when.
That's really good, and also challenging, right? This is a great reminder of how important it is to actually have a process in place before we just set goals. Before we say, "Oh, yeah, we're going to have this, we're going to implement this shiny idea." Then that you said, having that process in place is such a big deal, right?
Mm-hmm. But also not to over-engineer it. I see leaders do that a lot too, where, especially in a ministry context, where so many of us that work in ministry, we didn't sign up for ministry because we want to like spend time in meetings talking about goals and metrics. No, we'd rather be out at coffee or serving the underserved in our community. And that's why we're in ministry. And so what I also see sometimes is leaders swing the pendulum so far in the other direction out of feeling like we're not growing, so it must be because we're not tracking things clear enough. And that also can be disruptive to where our team, digs their heels in or doesn't feel seen and feels like they're a cog in the wheel. So I really encourage leaders. That's what I love about the Ready framework is it's just so simple. You want to really, and the action plans, it's 1 page, super simple. We do not want to overcomplicate it, or we're really going to struggle to see them to completion.
That's so good. I know that you have worked really hard on this framework and you've taken so many organizations through it. I'm just kind of curious, I know that many churches, they want to grow. They have ideas and they've got these passion projects and things that they want to execute. How does a church identify what's working and what's not working? How can they focus on what's actually going to move the needle?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kendall. So the first is when you do an evaluation exercise, make sure you have the key stakeholders in the room, the right people in the room. That is often a mistake that I see leaders make where they're like, oh yeah, we've got all the context, we know the answer. So we're going to do this exercise. Whereas really your team is going, I'm the one's greeting volunteers on Sundays. I'm the one that's, getting the phone calls when things are going wrong. And so really taking some time to be intentional about who should speak into that evaluation process. You don't want it to be too big to where it's chaos and you have too many voices in the room, but you do want the right key stakeholders in the room that have the context, that are close enough to the front lines. Because the reality is a lot of times as executive, if you are an executive leader that's listening, or even a second chair leader that's listening, we are usually the last to know. And so it's really important, before we do an exercise like this, that we're really having our ear to the ground on what's working and what's not. And if we feel like we can't answer those questions well, let's bring other people into the room to help us really be able to have the full perspective of those questions.
I'm going to jump in real quick and say that I think churches track a lot of this stuff, whether they realize it or not, if they're leveraging some type of church management software or volunteer system or even giving, right? That's a great indicator of engagement and where you're at,
Right.
and if you're growing or not, right? So I think just a reminder that for this specific audience, you probably have more data than you realize that you can leverage and tap into to really make some educated decisions. There's definitely people things that need to be discovered and documented and talked through with staff and with, maybe even, I don't know, like your building. It's your building. Like your doors are too small. I don't know. That's a silly example. But when it comes down to, for the example of a church growing or not growing, you can look at indicators like quarterly. What are you looking at? What are numbers doing, throughout the year, time of year? What events are you hosting? Does that give you a small influx and then you kind of fizzle out? And so what does that tell you? But just a reminder that if you're tracking to any of this stuff, even just attendance, it can be enough for you to have, something to work with there. It's not, I mean, you kind of said this, Holly, but I think when you're a bunch of people in the rooms, there is potential for opinions to enter the discussion, right? And for feelings, I feel like this is this or this is that. And so I think coming with the right stakeholders, but also maybe with the right metrics, if you have them, would be a great thing to leverage and kind of start with in your evaluation process.
It's a good point that you bring up, because, I'm sitting here thinking about you have the right people in the room, and everyone at a church conference table, a group of leaders, they're going to have an opinion on what thing we need to do next to move the needle, right? To fix this. Oh, we want more people, or we want to get people more engaged, or we want to giving to go up. I feel like a lot of people bring ideas. What I like about the framework that you discussed is that it allows you to say yes to the right things and no to the right things, right?
Yeah, exactly. You guys nailed it. And just to your point, and it goes back to keeping it simple, right? Like there are 11 bajillion different metrics that we can track. I mean, so many, but to have on a weekly basis for that leadership team to be able to be even if it's just on a Google Doc and like a table in a Google Doc of like our 5 key metrics: giving, attendance, capacity, and volunteer engagement, and small group, right? Like even if it's just those 5, what I find is a lot of leadership teams are not even looking at that. They're just talking about the fires that they have to put out, and that keeps us in chaos and prohibits us from that clarity.
Wow!
And so having that dashboard in front of you on a weekly basis. I call that a ready rhythm, is having that weekly rhythm of keeping it in front of it. And it's got to be simple. I was just on a call with a bunch of executive pastors earlier today, and the speaker was phenomenal and talked about what we're talking about, like the importance of a dashboard. And he showed 4 different examples ranging from super simple to what I'm talking about to one that was like 5 pages. And I wanted to, like, my eyes were glazing over. I was like, whoa. That's overwhelming, right? So you might get to a place where maybe the executive team is looking at that on a quarterly basis together. Absolutely. But on a weekly basis, keep it simple.
Yes.
What are the 5 things that you should be looking at on a weekly basis to make sure that you are growing? And it's not just growth for growing's sake, right? It's about thriving. Like we're not talking about, we just want to be the biggest church in town. We want to make sure that we're making disciples. And so
That's
whether we're
advice.
tracking attendance or giving, or we're tracking small group engagement, it should be about moving our mission forward in whatever our mission is.
That's great advice. Holly, I know that you coach churches regularly through building these action plans. What would you say does a healthy, realistic growth plan actually look like for a church?
Well, this is like the typical consultant answer. It depends, but it really does. So, for example, one of the churches that I'm working with right now, a lot of it is they have this incredible mission. I mean, seriously, out of the thousands of churches I've worked with over the last 15 years, like they are doing some of the most tangible boots on the ground work of Jesus, come to life at the border of Texas and Mexico, right?
Wow.
Jesus come to life with the unhoused community in their city. But it's these pieces that we're talking about from accountability perspective that are holding them back from following through. And so, for them, it's some of the basic, and I know that's true for my own life, right? It's like for my own health and growth personally, it's like, if I would just read 10 pages a day of a book, if I would just go on a walk for 20 minutes, if I would just choose a salad rather than the French fries, right? It's executing on the basics that allow us to grow, allow us to be healthy. And so that's this scenario. Whereas, another church that comes to mind, like they're crushing the so-called basics, right? They're more operational and they need some of that infusion of disruption from a creativity perspective, of new ideas and embracing different forms of technology. And so it really depends. Sure. But I think if I had to give one answer, it would really be going back to any healthy growth plan has clear owners for each part of the plan. Because whether it's a strategic plan, a growth plan, it doesn't matter if you don't have clear owners. It's likely not going to happen.
And what I'm hearing is really no matter what the goal is, whatever you're trying to bring to your church, you've got to set these goals. You've got to set these priorities and make sure that someone's going to own, and then have a deadline to it. Right. I think that's the key there is that, you actually have it down on paper and it's not just some lofty pie in the sky kind of goal that we hope one day will happen, because it likely won't happen on its own. Right.
Correct. It would be nice if it did. Yeah. It would be real nice.
Can I ask one other question? I specifically with this, and I don't want this to be a long-winded answer necessarily, and I know it's a loaded question, but so when you are determining who does what, do you have advice on how are those people getting picked? I mean, what if you're being voluntold to do something, you're like, I don't want to keep people accountable. That's uncomfortable. How do you recommend churches do that well?
That's so good, Jess. So I'm glad you asked this, because especially in this type of scenario, if you are an executive team or a leadership team going through this, it really there should be what I call an executive owner. Should be the champion of that action plan. Now, let's say your communications team is going through this and you're a team of, 2, 3, 5 people that are not on the executive team, then it's more about collaboratively. That's a hard word. Yeah. Committing in the room together who is the best person to own this action plan, whether it's strengths, weaknesses, experience, capacity, like who is the best person to own that, and really getting commitment and buy-in so that it's not a voluntold thing. That never typically goes over well. When they are able to have buy-in as a part of that. Another option is to say, okay, here's going to be our executive owner, but then asking what are other key stakeholders across the team that need to be a part of this plan to help see it to fruition. So that doesn't let the executive owner off the hook. We can't abdicate their responsibility, but it does mean that we might need to pull a couple other people in who have more context, have different capacity levels in order to contribute to that action plan actually happening.
Wow. And I want to piggyback off of that a little bit. While we're kind of talking about delegation and getting people, how would you say that pastors and teams can build those rhythms and roles that actually will support their growth goals over time, right? So this is like something that's scalable.
Yes. So 2 thoughts. One is a people thought. What I described the Ready Network is that we help organizations lead with clarity by aligning their people, processes, and profits, which profits in a church, it started with a P, so I had to use it. But really, when we say profits, we're stewarding the finances, the resources.
Sure. Money, not like prophecy.
Yeah, money, exactly. Yes, not profits with a PH, with an F, money. Yes. And so, oh man, I just forgot.
Sorry.
Oh yeah. Okay. No, it's okay. So from a people perspective, I really love the tool. You mentioned this at the beginning. I'm certified in the Working Genius. I love Working Genius because it's not just a personality assessment. It's a productivity tool. And so to your point on the delegation piece of like, how do we make sure that this scales, that this is sustainable, that we're not just doing a sprint and then we're reverting back to our old habits.
Yeah.
I love incorporating Working Genius because it helps us. And Jess, this is actually, similar to the question you just asked, like, how do we know who should be responsible for what?
Yeah.
Working Genius is a great tool of, okay, is this action plan more tactical? Like, are we really struggling on the implementation piece? Maybe we need to go borrow somebody's tenacity genius on the team who is a boss at implementation. Or is this action plan more in the ideation side of getting work done? So how can we make sure that the owner of this has ideation as a genius? So that's one on the people side. Then on the processes side, it goes back to what I call the ready rhythm. And so on a weekly, I'm a huge fan of weekly meetings. A lot of churches that I work with have monthly all staff meetings or bi-monthly. I'm a big fan of weekly because I just think the world moves too fast. And when we go more than a week, it allows people to fill in the communication gaps with their own stories. And if we're not in front of our team on a weekly basis, providing that clarity, where clarity lacks, negativity fills the void. And I see that all too often. We're having to clean up some of these culture issues or negative issues or cynicism that's seeped into the culture. Whereas if we were just in front of everybody on a weekly basis, pointing back to our mission, pointing back to our values, pointing back to our dashboard of why we're doing the things that we're doing, I think that would really help the sustainability of a lot of our growth plans.
I think COVID impacted this specific area so much, with kids being out of school, with churches being out. I mean, even working remote, I have a weekly touch point with my leader. And if I don't have that and there's outstanding questions or open issues, you're right. I mean, there's a lot of, well, maybe
big
if I
disconnect.
just figure it out myself, or, am I not a priority? Which it's easy to start thinking that way. That's such a great thing to just pause and think through.
What a great reminder.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
This is so good, Holly. I'm kind of curious, a big theme for our podcast is healthy churches and healthy leaders. And I'd love to know, just from your unique lens, your unique perspective, in your opinion, what's one essential component of a healthy church?
I would say thinking about the experience from the parking lot to the pew. It kind of goes back to the basics piece. There's a lot of churches that are well-intended, but are forgetting about the basics of is somebody at every door greeting people? Like, when's the last time that we made sure that was happening? Or if I'm a first-time visitor, is it really clear when I pull into the parking lot where I should go? Just really making sure that we're keeping that experience top of mind. I think when that is our sole focus, that will always lead to health, because we're not focused on ourselves. We're not focused on the last fire that just hit our, desk virtually or physically. We are focused on the experience of the person in our congregation or in our community. And that's always going to yield healthy outcomes.
It's really good.
That's so good. It's always so interesting to hear these responses from our guests, because generally speaking, it correlates directly with what they do. But process is, because that's essentially what you're speaking to, is what is the process of a visitor to whatever that looks like in their next step with membership, et cetera. And, Kendall and I have talked about this on a couple of episodes. It's something that we care very deeply about, specifically here at Ministry Brands. And the point of our tools is truly to allow you to do that well, right? So we provide these tools so that you can be thinking about the humans, and not about, the nitty gritty little details. And so it is that the human touch at every point. We allow you to do the automation piece and the, logistical back behind the scenes pieces, but that process, how it feels is what, Holly, you're talking about. How does it feel? And that's what matters, because that's really what will bring someone back or lead them to Christ or make them feel seen and loved where they otherwise might not. So that's a great reminder.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit.
We got to get the final five in, right?
Final five.
Are you okay with doing a rapid fire round, Holly? Are you up for the challenge?
Let's do it. I'm up for the challenge.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right. Number one, what is one book on this subject or something similar that you would recommend to church leaders?
Well, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but I highly recommend, if you haven't already, either read the book or take the Working Genius assessment. It is such a great resource on helping us understand if we feel like we have an ownership issue or we're stuck from a people perspective. That's a really great starting point. If you feel like your team might not, this is supposed to be rapid. I could talk forever. Okay, the answer is Working Genius. Move on.
Love
Next
it.
question.
I'm going to take that. I'm actually so curious. I love those like self-assessment things. So I'm going to take it. Okay. What's the last thing you listened to on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you stream music?
Amy Poehler's new podcast, A Good Hang. I listened to the Tina Fey and Amy Poehler episode. It was her first one the other day.
I've seen some clips from that. That looks really good.
Yeah, I just love them so much. Okay, that's a good one. All right, favorite piece of technology or software right now?
I mean, does everybody say this to you guys? ChatGPT.
Very popular answer,
It's
for sure.
Yes, it's a frequent flyer. Okay, quote or advice that stuck with you over the years.
So at the very beginning, we talked about my first job out of college, which was the cold calling one. And there was an executive on the team that had lunch with me one time. And she said, Holly, you got to care, but you can't care too much. And what she identified in me at, 22 or however old I was, and I was just thinking about this morning, is care about the things that you can control and release everything else. Because I still spend way too much time caring about the things that I am concerned about, but that I have no control over. And so I think about that. That was 15 years ago now. And I think about it probably on a weekly basis.
Wow.
If my husband were sitting here, he'd be like, this is you too. Okay. One thing that you would like to communicate to our audience of church leaders.
I would say keep going. I'm seeing a culture of cynicism right now. I told my husband the other day, I'm just allergic to cynicism and sarcasm right now. I feel like I'm seeing it more than ever. And I just feel really protective of our church leaders. And I just want to encourage everyone to just kind of look in the mirror and go, am I being cynical? Am I using sarcasm as a coping mechanism to deal with something deeper inside of me that I really need to sort out? I just think we need more positivity.
Wow.
We need more support of ourselves and each other. And I ain't got time for this cynicism and sarcasm. Like, we got too many important things to do. So that's kind of my high horse the last few weeks, just wanting to spread more positivity, because we've got a big mission to accomplish.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really good.
These screens are confusing. Sometimes it feels like we can say things and there's no consequence, but boy, is there. That's great.
Yes.
Thanks, Holly.
Yeah.
Holly, this has been such a great conversation today, and I feel like I've got so many notes over here that I look forward to applying even in my own church, and I know our listeners feel the same. I know that they'll want to follow you and get connected with your work. Where's the best place that they can do that? Where can they hear more?
So absolutely. Well, you can go to thereadynetwork.com and you can see the framework we've talked about. You can connect with us. I also have hollytate.com as well. Either way, you can find me there. And I think all of my social handles, are like at Holly Hall Tate. And I do have at the Ready Network on Instagram, but I haven't posted anything yet. So this is a good accountability. I need to create an action plan around getting that Instagram account off the ground. That's what I need to do.
I love it.
Well, for all of our listeners, be sure to check out all those resources. We'll have all of those links in our show notes. And I would just say to every church leader who's listening in on this today, if you're feeling stuck or just unsure about what's next for your church, just know that it is possible. You may be discouraged today. You may feel like you're behind, or you just are struggling to get that momentum. Just know that it is possible, and growth is not about gimmicks or figuring out just those easy answers that I feel like is looking to make it happen. But be clear, get that clarity, get that consistency, get that courage, and just know that you don't have to have it all figured out to start making some forward progress. And so work the plan as Holly has shared today, and get the team together. And I'm feeling like you can take those steps forward together. So I would say to Holly, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Jess, thank you so much for being a part of this with me. And overall, for everyone who's listening today, if this has encouraged you or helped you at all, would you consider sharing it? Share it with a friend, share it with somebody who is in ministry. And if it has been beneficial to you, leave us a review. We love reading those and seeing how this podcast is helping you. We love being able to equip leaders and encourage you. And again, if you haven't hit that follow or subscribe button, please do it. We want to get this out to as many people as possible. So until next time, keep leading well, and we look forward to seeing you next time right here on Church Leadership Lab.
This episode of the Church Leadership Lab podcast is brought to you by Ministry Brands, the largest provider of church technology software. Over 90,000 churches rely on Ministry Brands for their single platform solution that brings together all the digital tools a church needs. From online giving to websites to church management software and more, Ministry Brands is leading the way in simple-to-use, innovative solutions, all with the goal of empowering healthy churches. To learn more, visit ministrybrands.com.